Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Today's show is brought to you by OnPay, the new standard in payroll. You can pay employees and contractors in minutes, automate your payroll taxes and filings, as well as provide health benefits and HR in all 50 states. For more information, visit buildingthefutureshow.com/onpay. Welcome back to the show. Today we have David Rabin. He's the co-founder of Apollo Neuroscience. David, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you back on the show. I had you and your wife a while ago now. I think it was in last fall back on the show, and I thought you guys are out of beta now. You guys are shipping devices. I've actually had I had a beta device. I have the new device. I really want to talk about all that stuff. But maybe before we get into Apollo, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up, and then maybe quickly into your schooling, your background, and then I really want to spend the majority of the time on Apollo, because if people want more background on yourself, they can listen to the first episode.
Sounds good. Thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it, especially to have, important conversations about health and things that we can do to improve our lives with technology, and at times where we're under a significant amount of strain and stress, maybe more so than we have been in ever for most of us.
100% agree.
And so I think, it's particularly a really interesting time to be a psychiatrist.
Sure.
And my background is in psychiatry and neuroscience, and I specialize in trauma, particularly what we call treatment-resistant trauma and depression, and anxiety, and substance use disorders, and people who typically struggle to achieve symptom remission with the standard of care. And this is becoming, unfortunately, in America and many first world countries, a very large and growing population of patients every year, in particularly mental health. And so I've always been fascinated by people who don't seem to get better, and other people who seem to be extraordinarily resilient and really overcome stress effectively over time. And so, I really was also fascinated by consciousness and the way that we perceive reality and meaning from the world. Why do some things seem extraordinarily meaningful to us and other things not meaningful at all? So, these things kind of brought me through studies of aging and neuroscience, and I did my graduate work at Albany Medical College with Dr. Sally Temple, and then and that was in aging and dementia and blindness disorders in humans, where we effectively created disease in a dish models to study how the aging response worked in the eye and the brain, and we found some incredible findings from that. And then I realized from that, and in addition to everything I learned, that I also learned that I really like to work with people more than I like to work in a lab. And so I decided to go into finish medical school, and then I went into psychiatry, and I completed my psychiatry residency at Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic at the University of Pittsburgh, where I worked with Dr. Greg Siegel, who is a world-renowned psychologist in cognitive neuroscience, and particularly with respect to depression and treatment-resistant depression. And so I worked with him for about 5 years, and from that research on ways to interrupt negative thinking patterns in depression came the Apollo technology, which stemmed from touch being one of the most powerful ways to interrupt negative thinking in depression and anxiety disorders. And when we realized that we could induce the similar things in the body, similar patterns of safety neurons firing from using technology like what we developed into Apollo, that was just such an incredible breakthrough moment for us, because we realized that we'd really figured something out in the body where we know how to activate a sense of balance, a sense of calm in the body that is similar to meditation and what you can get with deep breathing that eventually, now two and a half years after that particular finding became, the Apollo technology that you mentioned is currently available. So, so thanks for having me along this journey.
No, very cool. So for people that haven't heard of Apollo, what exactly is it, and what made you make the jump from it kind of being a research project into being a real thing that people can buy now?
That's a great question. So Apollo is a wearable technology that was developed out of our research at the University of Pittsburgh on the sense of touch, and as I said earlier, how to interrupt negative thinking patterns, or what we call rumination, negative intrusive thoughts about ourselves, about our lives, that happen very commonly in all of us, but very, very commonly in people with depression and anxiety and most mental illnesses. And so the reason why that works, I should say before I get into that, Apollo is the wearable activates touch receptors in our skin, just like somebody holding your hand or giving you a hug on a bad day. That instantly sends signals to the brain through the skin that the brain recognizes as safe. Because if we have time to pay attention to the feeling of somebody holding our hand or the feeling of something gently vibrating on our leg that kind of feels like an ocean wave or a cat purring, when you have time to pay attention to that, the brain instantly knows that we have enough time, we're safe enough to have enough time to pay attention to that feeling. Because if we were running from a lion or we're in an immediate danger situation that actually threatened our survival, we would not be able to take the time to pay attention to that feeling. So the brain knows much better intuitively than we do. And all that processing happens, for the most part, without our awareness, which is really fascinating.
Interesting.
So we figured it, yeah. And breath work works exactly the same way, right? Taking a deep breath intentionally tells our brains instantaneously that we are safe enough to take the time to pay attention to the feeling of the breath moving into our bodies, right? Normally, we don't have time to do that. We're so busy and distracted. And so that's effectively the feedback loop that results in the calming effect that meditation and yoga and mindfulness and all of these incredible tools that are thousands of years old have. And so, but the problem is that those tools, as incredible as they are and as free as they are to all of us, take a lot of practice and discipline to learn, sometimes tens of thousands of hours. And so we created Apollo originally for our patients, but we realized it has incredible benefit for everyone. We use it all the time personally. And it basically, we created it to give people the benefits of meditation and mindfulness by stimulating the body's touch receptors to help with these gentle layered vibrations that just help calm the body. And when you calm the body and help remind the body that it's safe, all of a sudden it gives you pause, as if you had taken a deep breath, and it gives you an opportunity to sort of reconsider the situation you're in from a standpoint of safety rather than threat and fear.
Interesting. So just for people, so it's clear, you can wear Apollo like on your wrist, or you mentioned on your leg, and it sends different vibrations, but the vibrations are different based on what you're trying to do, like focus or sleep or calm down. Or do you want to talk about how that works and the science behind the different vibrations and how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the most fun parts, because all of us on the founding research team originally were musicians, and or music was a big part of our lives. And what's really fascinating is that this was all figured out originally through music and the way that music affects the body. And it started with Pythagoras in like 2000 BC or something like that, just coming up with the circle of fifths by looking at the stars, and then progressed all the way through modern day, where we're sending frequencies of sound to people and measuring their brain patterns on EEG and fMRI. And we're seeing that different tempos and different rhythms make the body feel more awake and energized, and different volumes, right? When you listen to loud, fast music, it typically makes you more energized. And we use that when we work out and dance and stuff. And when we're want to calm down and sleep and meditate, we listen to much calmer, soothing, slow music. And so that's just known intuitively, and there's also a lot of science behind it now. So looking at that, we extrapolated patterns from that, and that helped us to create different frequency patterns that are basically the most common seven goals that we all have in our lives that most of our testers told us they wanted. So it starts with energy and wake up, and then clear, which is the most energizing, and people use that in the morning instead of coffee, or if they're on long drives and are falling asleep, it can be very helpful. And then the next one, and then they decrease in terms of energy from high to low, energizing being the most, the highest, and then going to social and open, which kind of feels just like a very clear, calm, wakeful frequency that makes you kind of feel like you are sort of, able to not be self-conscious and kind of be open to other things around you and connected with other people. So more attention outside of you than inside. It's interesting to describe because when people haven't felt it, there are, it's a very familiar feeling when you feel it. It's like having a really good day or having a glass of wine, except you don't need the glass of wine because you're using the wearable to do the same thing. And then that helps you learn how to do it more effectively on your own over time. So it basically, and then down from there is a social, clear and focused, which is for like extended work periods and kind of like an amphetamine or a stimulant, but more gentle, and you can turn it on and off whenever you want. And then rebuild and recover is for post-workout or post-intense stress of any kind. And then meditation and mindfulness, and then, which is obvious, relax and recharge is deep relaxation, and then sleep and renew. And so you can basically choose from each of these and set a timer and an intensity, and it will take you through for, anywhere from 5 minutes to 2 hours. And the effects last for about 30 minutes to 2 hours after each use.
Interesting. Yeah, because you guys shipped me a beta unit, and I was playing with it. And the interesting thing for me is, I've always kind of slept like garbage, especially the last number of years. And the one thing I really noticed was it really helped me sleep better, right? And I know a ton of people obviously struggle with all the other things, and I'm not saying the other things didn't work for me, but I think for me personally, the biggest benefit that I found using Apollo was just sleeping better, right? And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and there's no science based around my comment I'm about to make, but I always find if I sleep better, then I'm usually calmer, I'm more focused, all the other stuff that you guys are building into Apollo. For me, just sleeping better, I get a lot of that extra benefit. Is there anything to that? Is it backed by science? Is that just me, or what are your thoughts around that?
I mean, I think you're right on with that. Sleep is known to be, especially with the science that's come out in most recent years, sleep is the most important part of the recovery process for us.
Okay.
So it's the part of our recovery process where our heart rate comes down to its lowest point. The body goes into the deepest level of hibernation, sort of dormancy or it's sort of recovery. It's a recovery state, a rejuvenating state that over time, the more restful, good quality sleep you get, the better you feel in general, as you said, but also you can measure it. And we see that the better sleep you get, usually the better heart rate variability you have as well.
Right. Okay. So I'm curious to dive a little bit deeper into the device, because you guys, I've mentioned a few times, is you guys had a beta unit. Walk us through the journey of actually creating a hardware device that Bluetooths to a smartphone, and then actually getting that to a version where you're shipping a real hardware software product, which is really, really hard to do. As you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a long journey. I could never have done it alone, of course. It was started from the beginning with my wife Kathryn, who was on the last show, and And Kathryn has, really led the charge on the fundraising and the business and front and the strategy of this whole operation and the execution of a lot of the ideas that we come up with together, and also, even starting out originally helping us really execute on the ideas that we had in the lab, and helping us raise funding on that to run our original research studies. And I should say, to answer one of your previous questions, when our first research study, big research study came back in 2017, which was a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled crossover study, which is one of the most rigorous forms of a clinical trial to do, we found that without a doubt, only the Apollo frequencies, which when people had no idea what frequencies they were getting, only the Apollo frequencies reliably improved performance under stress, cognitive performance, and heart rate variability within 3 minutes. And this under a very, very stressful task that only the very few things improved performance on. So this was really fascinating, and that was the turning point that from that study, which Kathryn helped us raise money for in 2016, 2017, that study was a turning point for us and said, hey, this is actually worth our time. You don't get results like this every day. This is incredible. And so we ended up using some of the funds that we raised from the University of Pittsburgh and from these innovation competitions to basically fund early commercialization and then fund a whole bunch of prototypes. And really, prototyping was incredibly important for us because we're making something, and a lot of people come up with great ideas that have never been done before. And I think my best advice is that I can give you is that anything can be done if you just have to figure out how to effectively use resources to do it, which usually requires bringing on people or connecting with people in any way who are older or have diverse expertise that you do not have. And you may not have any idea who these people are, but you just have to keep asking and trying to meet as many people as you can who may have any idea how the heck you're going to do this because they've done it before. Somebody has always done it before you,
Right. Especially
for the most
nowadays,
part.
right?
There's very few things. Right. That's what I mean. Yeah. I mean, we're in a time that's so incredible where there's so many people who have done so many things that it's really hard to find somebody who hasn't done it before you. So, and sometimes there's lots of people. So in this case, we really just try to surround ourselves with those people. And so and the advice from those people helped Kathryn and I to basically prototype and then send these out to a whole bunch of people and run more trials and see what happened. And we kept getting consistent results, which was extraordinarily promising and also rare for research in general. And then and then while I finished my clinical training, which was quite demanding because I was in residency at the time, I finished my clinical training, my research, and then Kathryn ended up starting the company. And so she and using the data that we got out of our studies at the university, she was able to raise money to hire me and then hire a staff of 9 other people that are mostly in Pittsburgh that have brought basically, ended up running almost everything in-house. We had some consultants on the side for product design and for, some other software things along the way and hardware things along the way. But in general, we really, I think one of the strategies is we brought industry leaders onto our team that were just, they experienced Apollo. They loved it. They thought it was something that really, they could get behind. It was consistent with their values, and we were consistent with people that they would want to work with. And so we brought people on who were, 30 years older than us and more senior to us in some cases, or 20 or 30 years experience more than we had. And they really helped us scale everything and plan everything and account for, all the potholes that you can hit along the way. And when those people didn't know the answers to questions that we had, we would find other people who could answer those questions. And it was just about, just and we still make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes.
Sure.
And so it's about, being non-judgmental about those mistakes and just understanding that they're going to happen and there are opportunities for growth. As we are in now with, COVID and the pandemic, a very significant opportunity for growth for us as a community and as a culture. And so I think so basically for us, we launched into January, February of this year, and then we sold out within 2 weeks.
Congrats on that. That's huge.
Thank you. And we had it was a great launch. And so now we are still taking orders for the next batch that are coming, and the orders are coming in steadily, and we are excited to make more and to bring more of these to the world. So that's and now I think the challenge is adapting to what's coming, right? And that people are really looking for, different ways to heal and recover from what they're experiencing right now and to cope with the stress of what's going on right now. And so, we're in a process of trying to understand that and also, help people when they're really struggling from a lot of stress that we're all facing.
Sure. Well, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I was reading online, and that's why I said you can correct me if I'm wrong. I've read that obviously drug use and alcohol abuse has gone up quite a bit since COVID-19, and some people are actually overdosing because they just can't handle it. Is that fair to say? And so with what the point I'm trying to get at is, instead of going to a substance, you can basically use other methods that don't make you overdose. You can't overdose using your Apollo.
Right. Yeah, and that's really the goal, I think, for us, is to be able to provide an alternative that feels good, and it doesn't have any side effects, and it's easy to use, and you can turn it on anytime you want to get that benefit by just pressing two buttons on your ankle or your wrist. And that, when you feel uneasy, restless, or craving, for instance, in some cases, I think we oftentimes forget that because we're surrounded by alcohol and drugs as part of our culture for so long, and in movies and, music videos and in songs themselves, and so many parts of our culture are alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. And, that's all well and good, and marketing and whatever you want to think about that is your call. But the point is that it's influenced our consciousness and the way that we cope with stress.
Sure.
And the way that we deal with discomfort in general. This idea that you can escape from or numb yourself to discomfort is an idea that is not actually consistent with reality in any way, because there is no escape from discomfort. There's only more discomfort if you run from your discomfort.
Sure.
So ultimately, it's that truth that has to sort of work its way into the public narrative and education when we teach people about how to cope with trauma on their own, is that substances are not really, substance use regularly or abuse is not a viable outlet for that. And it actually increases your risk of dying if you get sick, and it increases your risk of getting sick. So in the cases, particularly with alcohol, alcohol we think is benign, but drinking alcohol increases your risk of getting infections like COVID. And if you could use something like Apollo, or meditate, or deep breathe, or do yoga, and all of those things will increase your heart rate variability and increase your likelihood of not getting sick and of recovering if you are sick.
Interesting. No, I think it's actually quite fascinating, right? Because I think more and more people nowadays, and partly just because I think it's so much more readily available, are trying to use other things outside of these coping mechanisms, which really just mask the problem, right? If you just get drunk every night, you're not really fixing the problem. You're just masking the problem.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. So I'm curious to dive a little bit deeper into the actual device that you guys launched, because it's interesting. I don't know how do you explain it to the listener, because we've kind of covered that it vibrates, it can go on your wrist or your ankle, but how else do you describe how to wear the device and how it works?
So the device it's a little pod with a metal clip on top that has two buttons. The buttons allow the device to be used without the phone around. So you can set the whole point of the wearable is to be, independent of the phone. as much as possible. So you can set it to whatever setting and whatever intensity you want and program on your phone. And then you can activate that program by pressing the two buttons at the same time, one time, or pause it by doing the same thing. And then you can also increase or decrease intensity on the device itself. And then there's a fabric strap that wraps the device around the body. So people usually wear it on the wrist or the ankle. My personal favorite is the ankle. But you can also wear it on the arm. And we have people putting it on it works on any part of the body. So you can actually wear it on other parts of the body as well. Or we have people putting it in their clothing and doing lots of interesting things with it because they like it in different places. So, so that's kind of how the technology is used, sort of from a high view. But I think what's more interesting is that people use it to increase, basically, I would say the most common use is their sense of agency or autonomy, like self-control, self-awareness, which also comes with it a sense of very potent calm and sort of safety. And what that does is it increases, and I don't think people necessarily, the interesting thing is I don't think most people realize that that's exactly what it is they feel, because they just feel a little clearer and calmer. And what it does when you're doing anything stressful, and what most people use it for more intentionally, is they say it helps put them into flow. So most people think of like flow or coherence or peak performance, peak recovery states, this neural state where our bodies are working at their most peak, highest level. You're just in the zone with whatever you're doing. We have so many terms for it in our vernacular. And that feeling, flow, being in the zone, is what meditating all the time or being constantly present is about. And that's a feeling that, monks and master meditators strive for all the time. And that's what the practice of meditation is, to train us to be able to access that feeling at any time. And so not just when we sit and meditate, but actually any time in our lives, to be maximally, optimally present in the peak flow state. And so that's sort of what people describe Apollo doing for them that they like the most.
Interesting. And
in addition to sleep, I would say that and sleep.
Yeah. Okay. No, fair enough. We talked a little bit about the app, but do you want to talk a little bit deeper about that and what you can do in the app?
Sure. So in the app, there's we talked about the 7 settings that you can use sort of throughout your day, and so you can change the timing and the intensity of those settings, and then you can also favorite what your favorite mode is, and with the intensity and the timing, and then we also track your usage. And over time, there'll be new software updates as we learn about each user, and we'll be able to start to provide you with custom programs and metrics and things that start to really enhance the experience. So my favorite that's coming out in the next 3 to 6 months is scheduling. And the neat part about scheduling is you'll be able to set when you want the frequencies to play throughout the day for how long, and then you can and then that will be on the device, and you don't need your phone around to set it, and it will just turn on when it needs to turn on for the day, and it'll help regulate your sleep and wake cycles without you having to go back to your phone, because the blue light itself from the phone is one of the most stimulating things. It disrupts melatonin release. So if you can avoid screens in that way, it just helps, improve your sleep and wake cycles, which increases the, your sleep and recovery that much more. So it's really about optimizing your entire experience, not just Apollo is one tool in that experience. Managing your circadian rhythms and your calendar is another tool. Apollo can help a little bit with that. And so, the scheduling is going to be very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then another one is data visualization, which will be one of the next features after scheduling, probably in the 6 to 12 month period, where we'll pull in data from other wearables like the Oura Ring. And you can view your Oura Ring data in the app and see, hey, as I use Apollo, my heart rate variability is going up. As I use Apollo, my sleep is getting better. And you'll be able to track those metrics in the app, which will be really neat.
Interesting. No, that's really cool. And so how can people actually order one, and what's the cost?
So Apollo costs $349. And it's on our website, apolloneuro.com, or apolloneuroscience.com. It's APOLLONEURO.com. And you can order them now, and we highly recommend it because they have been selling out quickly. So if you reserve yours now, we'll be shipping them, assuming that there's no further significant major COVID issues with manufacturing. We'll be shipping the next batch out in May.
Oh, very cool. So I'm curious then to touch on that a little bit. Obviously, you guys are affected personally and professionally because if you can't get certain pieces to manufacture, because you guys manufacture in the U.S., correct?
Yeah, we do. I would say probably 80 to 90% of our manufacturing process is done in the U.S., and the final assembly and all of our software and hardware assembly and then is all done in the U.S. However, there are a couple parts that you just can't get from anywhere else, and a couple of those came from China. So of course there are delays on those parts.
Right. Okay. And so.
And then based on the timing, now there's delay. Based on the timing, then there's delays in the States, because now the States have it worse than. So now China's turning their manufacturing back on, but now the States are slowed down, and the States are managing the crisis in a lot of ways not as well as China did in terms of containment. So we'll see how things go. I think it's unpredictable at this point for a lot of people.
Sure. Well, and I guess just for you guys in manufacturing or assembling this stuff in America, people are probably doing this at home then, or how does that kind of work?
People doing what at home? The assembling?
Yeah.
No, we have a contract manufacturer in Pittsburgh, and so they are an FDA approved facility, and are Apollo's built to FDA regulatory requirements and HIPAA compliance, and to be used by a health population. So we do it all at a FDA approved certified facility outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is near where our whole staff is. Most of our staff is based. So it's really helpful for us as a young startup, when we're building a new technology, to be able to go, you could just drive over to the facility. We couldn't do that without John and Doug and our whole team that is a hardware team and that's working on all that.
No, very cool. So do you guys just ship in North America, or where do you guys ship?
So we ship within North America, Europe, and the UK. And I think that's it right now. That's actually quite complicated, that I realized, and we all realized, I think, after we started doing it, that not all shippers necessarily know how to do the best job of shipping internationally. And so, there's always a little bit of troubleshooting there. And it's, now we're excited to have a lot of international customers, which is really great. And we've been getting a lot of support, particularly in the UK and Europe. And so there's also been a lot of people in Australia who've been very interested in this technology. So we're working on supplying to Australia, but that's coming up in the next several months.
Okay. And then what's the battery life on average on the device?
So the battery life will last you all day.
Okay.
If you use it in bursts, which is what we recommend. So bursts would be like using it for anywhere between 15 minutes and an hour, or 5 minutes and an hour of use every couple hours, and that is enough. That will get you through all day. And also, I think most people think that you want to use it at max intensity right away, but you wouldn't listen to music when you turn up the stereo all the way to listen to music. Right when you start listening to music, you would start it low and gradually turn it up, because it's jarring to the body, and the vibrations work the same way. And to answer your question earlier about how I would describe it to somebody who has no idea what anything else we're talking about, I think Apollo is really most like music that I compose in the lab, based on the neuroscience of how the body works, that's composed for the touch receptors of your skin rather than for the sound receptors of your ears. And that's really that's really what Apollo is.
Well, because isn't that how like Beethoven basically wrote? Is like because he was deaf, he basically had to go by the vibrations, right? Is that kind of the similar thing?
Yeah,
that's really cool, actually.
That you can you can develop, greater senses of experience when we lose, our regular common senses.
Sure. So you guys, or the device also supports airplane mode. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? So like basically I can use that on a plane is what you're saying, right?
So you can use it on a plane with or without airplane mode being on.
Okay.
So the reason why it has airplane mode, and what airplane mode means is that it disconnects the device from everything else around it.
Okay.
So the device the device no longer sends out any signals of any kind other than sound waves to your body. So the reason that's important is because there's been a lot of research coming out that shows that, EMF, that is electromagnetic frequencies that are sent out by Bluetooth devices and cell phones and things that emit a certain particular frequency, like even like 5G is amongst that frequency range, can affect our bodies in somewhat unpleasant ways. Not for all of us necessarily do we notice it. No, not everyone notices it, but there are some people. And what's interesting is people who have traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder, I've personally noticed in my own patient population have a much greater likelihood of being sensitive to EMF from devices. And it just makes them feel uncomfortable and unpleasant. And so a lot of devices like the Oura Ring and like Apollo, have now adopted airplane mode to turn off unnecessary signals that don't need to be sent when you're traveling or doing something like that. The downside is when you're in airplane mode, you can't change settings.
Right.
So you have to plug the device back in to re-enable regular non-airplane mode so that the device can connect back to the phone, and then you can change settings and update your data and that kind of thing.
Right. Well, so it's more about accessibility in the sense that people that it does affect have the ability to still use Apollo, right? Is that fair to say? Like, I guess it's more complicated than that, but.
Yeah. I mean, it's really trying to make Apollo more available to as many people as possible. And, a lot of these people, we developed in originally Apollo technology, the science behind it, we developed in the lab at the University of Pittsburgh for people with PTSD and trauma. Originally, that was the purpose. So if we didn't design it for those people to be able to use, then, we're not really staying true to our mission.
Interesting. So I'm curious, what advice do you give people that are looking to do a hardware, software startup, whether it's based on science or in the healthcare space or not?
Well, I would make sure that you really, really, truly believe in what you're doing first.
Sure.
And that you really have conviction that this is what you want to devote every minute of your life to for the next 5 to 10 years, which I think is a pretty big decision for a lot of people, and they don't really take the time to think through that.
Sure.
And I think once you've made that decision for yourself, then it sort of sets a foundation of confidence in you that you are going to do something, right? Like you've set it as your mission that you're going to go do something, and that you truly believe that this thing is it, and it's going to work. And ideally, you have the evidence to do that, right? You have the evidence to back that up. And I think that was really important for us. We have other jobs that we could do and get paid more than we're getting paid right now to run this company. But we're running the company, we're staffing, and we're working hard and we're working our lives for, putting off other things that we could be doing in our lives because we really believe in this technology and what it could do for the world and how it could help people, because we've seen it and we have the evidence to back it up from our clinical trials and from all the work that we did before building up to the point that we started the company. And so for us, I think, and a lot of other people have other opportunities other than just to start a business. So, if you don't have the evidence, whether that's market research or whether that's, scientific research or both, or whatever other research you need to do, if you don't have an evidence, that this is something you can really put everything you've got behind, then you probably should hold off until you have that evidence. But once you have that evidence, then you can really turn it on, and then people will come to you that are the people. And when you start asking in the community, people will come to you, and they will want to work with you. And that's when you can start to build a team. You start asking around the community, hey, I need somebody who does this. I need somebody who does that. I need advice on how to fundraise, and just start asking people and going to try to, it's really just going out and connecting with people and trying to tap into these collective centers of knowledge, right, about how to do something new. I think the thing that's about starting a business that's really interesting is it's always uncertain, and there's never one right way to do it, everything, right? There's so many different ways to do it, and there's so much uncertainty no matter how you do it. There's no one way where you're if I just do it this way, everything's great. That's just not how it works. Yeah. There's always consequences for every action, and there's always unpredictable things around every corner. And so it's just really, preparing oneself to adapt to a life that has that as sort of the basis, and then getting ready to just roll with it, and not get too attached to anything, and know that, this is going to be a wild ride, but, I'm invested in the outcome. And then when you start to find the people around you that are also invested in the outcome as much as you are, or a similar amount as you are, then you start to see this incredible thing start to grow around you, and everybody just gets really energized and excited, and that energy collectively fuels, the development of whatever it is you're making. But again, I think really focusing on team is so critical. We could not do this without each other, Kathryn and I, without the 10 people who have been the core part of our team, and without all of our friends and family and the network of people that we've created all over the country and the world now, over the last 5 years. We just couldn't have done it without any of those people. So it's really important to build a team of people that can support you in what you're doing.
No, I think that's really good advice. But we're kind of coming to the end of the show. So how about we close with mentioning where people can get more information about you guys, and any other links you want to mention?
Sure. So you can find out about me. I actually still do clinical medicine and psychedelic medicine. You can with ketamine therapy, which is now one of the leading treatments for treatment-resistant depression, and is used off-label for many other treatment-resistant mental illnesses. And it's very exciting now because we have an opportunity to provide this treatment to people from the comfort of their homes. So you can find out more about that and other breakthrough treatments that we're working on at drdave.io. And you can find out more about Apollo, again, at apolloneuro.com. And then my socials, if you want to connect with me personally, are at Dave Rabin on Twitter and at Dr. David Rabin on Instagram.
Perfect, David. Well, again, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day, man.
Likewise. You too. Thanks again.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.